Hopefully you are all okay with that. I'm really glad to see you here, some of whom I know and others I don't. I'm Blyth Lord. I'm the founder and executive director of Courageous Parents Network. We've wanted to do this topic on extended family in different ways for a while now, because you aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, close friends who feel like family are or can be such a huge piece of the equation. That was certainly true for me and my husband when we were going through this with our daughter, Cameron. I realize that I now look more like a grandmother, but when I was the mother, I really was benefited from the presence of grandparents and aunts and uncles in different combinations. I also want to acknowledge that that's not true for everyone. Some families are closer than others, or rather some members of the family are closer to the nuclear family. Of course, there are also there are all these logistical things that play into availability to actually be physically present, such as where you live in relation to the child and family that's sick, whether you have children of your own and you can't leave them to go be away. They may be in school. You may have work that doesn't allow you to be physically present with your loved ones. You may have a relationship that is strained. There are just a lot of things that come into play when a child is sick in the family, and but it is also the case that the entire family is affected. And when we love people, we want to find our way, if possible, of how we can authentically show up to be supportive in a way that works for us. And this hour is an opportunity to hear from 2 aunts and 3 grandparents who found their way of showing up for their loved one, and in this case, niece and granddaughters. I'll introduce them in a moment. I do really want to stress that that every family, we acknowledge that every family is different and that there is no right or wrong way to do this. The examples you're going to be hearing tonight are from people who are close to the parents whose child was sick. These children have, in both instances, the children, Quinlan and Javi, have passed away. So these are bereaved aunts and grandparents, but for whom their experience is very, very present. And they have assured us that there's nothing they are not willing to talk about. We are a small group. So when we open it up for conversation, I hope you will raise your hand and speak. We'll call on you and then you can speak. If during the more presentation part of the program you want to make a comment or ask a question, please put it in the chat and we'll make sure it gets acknowledged. But sooner rather than later, we will open it up because our beautiful aunts and grandparents have said that they are willing to talk. And I know that a number of you here have, who aren't officially on the panel, are experienced as well. So I hope you will share not just questions, but things that have worked for you or things that you've wondered. All right, without further ado, I will introduce who we have with us tonight. We have Michael Sack and Sandi Sherr, who are the grandparents of Javi Lev, who died just this past January at the age of 2. They are the mother and father of Myra and parents-in-law of Matthew, Javi's parents. Also joining us is Leah Sack, who is Myra's sister and Javi's aunt. And then joining us is Robin Lynn, the grandmother of Talia, who died just before her second birthday, and the mother of Carla. And variations of their voices can be heard on Courageous Parents Network. And also joining us is Dani, the aunt of Quinlan and the sister of Lindsay and sister-in-law of Bear. So thank you, all 5 of you, if I've done my math right, for being here, and for everyone else. And without any further ado, I'm going to get the ball rolling. And I think we're going to start with a video from Jennifer. I also want to acknowledge that my husband Charlie's sitting right next to me, and he had his own set of extended family as part of this, so he might pipe up too. Who knows? He might make a cameo appearance. All right, Jennifer, if you want to start the video.
Sure. Hopefully. Let's see. Sorry. Go.
I am Melissa Hall. I am Sarah's mother, and I was Emerson's grandmother and still feel as though I am her grandmother. She was my only granddaughter. For me, personally, that's the worst thing that can happen to you, because like I'm fairly concrete, and I like to know what it is. How do we go? What's our goal here to fix it? And how do we get there? And then fix it. This I couldn't fix. So when this happened to Sarah, as I heard the diagnosis, it was almost like I can't start crying. I can't, kind of lose my way here. I need to stay together and focused and do what I can to help. I also need to take a step back, not rush in with my pointer finger, and said, here's what we're going to do to make this, find out everything about this and make it the best we can make it. Because I was afraid if I did that, which I could have, I wanted Sarah and Steve to stick together and work these things out themselves. Because I think at that point, they were and I was too, except I thought, somebody has to watch over them. And so I kind of stepped back and I tried to be supportive when I could be.
So I think what we hear there is a grandmother who wants to fix things. And she's taking the parental role, but also realizing that she in that moment actually isn't the parent of the grandchild, and figuring it out. I am curious in this moment, looking particularly at the 3 grandparents here, Robin, Sandi, and Michael, how that, what you think as you were hearing Melissa, did that feel, do you recognize that, how you felt in your role as the mother of, or the parents of one of the parents, and then of course the grandparents? Maybe Sandi, do you want to go first, and then Michael, and then Robin?
I think Sarah captured it perfectly. It's hard to say what our first concern was, but predominantly our energy and our emotions went to Myra and to Matt as their parents. As Sarah said, somebody had to protect them. And so we were not the only ones who did, but as the mother and the father our maternal paternalistic maternal instincts kicked in, and it was for our children. Of course for Javi, but it was initially and primarily for our child.
Michael?
Yeah, I would agree with Sandi, and thought that Sarah said it well as well. I think what's hard is you're caught too in the moment, and so trying to get to that balance of needing to be so sad and grieving yourself, but not knowing what the boundary is of showing that grief versus showing support, and how to step in, how to step back, how that might be perceived. And then all the time worrying about all of them as the unimaginable is taking place. And by all of them, it's all of them.
Mm-hmm. Robin?
I told Carla that evening when she told me the diagnosis that I would be present for her throughout. And present didn't mean actually being physically present. It meant being aware of her mood. It even meant, I learned, being aware of the weather, because a rainy day with a sick child would provoke, bad feelings. So I followed the weather. I was aware, and that was a way of being present. And I recognized that if I wanted to grieve, well, my neighbor is a therapist. I'll talk to her. And so I focused on Carla, and I was present in that way.
Thank you, Robin. The sisters, the aunts, Dani and Leah. I know, I'm sorry, I know that Leah is a younger sister. Dani, are you Lindsay's older sister or younger sister?
I'm her younger sister.
So you guys are both younger sisters, and I'm not sure that matters, but you see your big sister going through something extraordinarily difficult. How did you how do you articulate what you felt the opportunity and responsibility was, what you were being called to do or felt yourself called to do? And Leah, maybe you go first, and then Dani.
Yeah, well, I think initially the immediate response was that we all, my other siblings and my parents, kind of all descended upon Boston, where Myra, Matt, and Javi live. And the initial response was just be there, be physically present, kind of don't leave their side in the immediacy. And then I think, pretty quickly you become aware of what this theme that's been coming up of what's that balance between supporting, but also making sure that they, Myra and Matt, are getting quiet, sacred, private time to understand their feelings and to have their parental relationship with their daughter, and not make it about the logistics of all of us being there to support them. So I think kind of shifting pretty quickly into being aware of how do we protect their privacy and their relationship uniquely with their daughter, while still helping them kind of get through another day. And that's just a learning process. Every day you're kind of figuring out how to do that dance, but as everyone has said, the priority being that they know that they are supported and that the support will come in whatever form we're understanding them that they're telling us they need it in, and making sure that they have their relationship at the forefront too.
Nice. Dani?
So I know for me, my sister's 7 years older than me. So for most of our lives, she was the one that was like a second mom to me. And she was always the one looking out for me. So when we found out that my nephew Quinlan had some medical issues, it kind of became this almost like a reversal of roles, where now instead of being the one who was always kind of babied and she was always checking in on me, I'm now having to be this support for her and checking in on her and making sure that she's good and that her husband is good, and kind of balancing being my sister's sister and then being my nephew's aunt. Because before his medical issues, I was staying with them like 1 or 2 nights a week to watch him while they worked. So I was already physically present in their house a lot of the time. And so when we learned of the medical issues, it became full-time. I just moved in and to help out. So it was this just very strange, if I'm being honest, balance of figuring out, okay, how am I going to be the best sister that I can be for my sister and sister-in-law for my brother? How am I going to be the best aunt for my nephew? And without encroaching on their lives and their ability to parent their child, just figuring that all out.
Yeah, I appreciate your saying that, Dani, because it is weird. There's such an intensity and intimacy that happens, and it's hard to articulate what the boundaries are. You sort of find them. I think you find them, and they'll be, but you can't say this is where the boundaries need to be. You figure it out.
Blyth, I can tell you how I found a boundary. Okay. I said to Carla that the only way that I felt comfortable, the only time I knew she was okay was when I was with her. And she said, well, you can't be with me the whole time. And so that was an establishment of boundaries. And that's why I learned to ride the Amtrak train.
Was that hard for you, Robin, for your daughter to say, Mom, I don't want you here all the time?
No, it was a relief. It was a relief. It meant that she knew what she wanted, and that allowed me to find a way to help her. And in fact, in preparation for today's panel, I called Carla and I said, tell me, how did it work out? How did I fit in? And she said to me that my greatest value, that I didn't overwhelm her with my needs, and because I was open to her needs. So Talia died 4 years ago. And this is really the first time I asked Carla for an evaluation of myself.
Sounds like she giving you a pretty good grade.
I'll take it.
How about for you? Were there moments where you struggled, any of you, with what those boundaries were, or what do I do in this moment? Like, what do I do? Or did you just live into it? Did the way reveal itself, as they say? And how much was explicit, like in what Robin just said? Carla gave her some pretty strong, boundary, mild road signs, like I want you here and I don't want you here, versus how much of it did you just sort of muddle along and figure it out?
I have a couple of examples of muddling along and being helped to figure it out. I think in general, we watched and actively listened and took our cues from Myra and Matt and from the siblings, who were often there more than we were and have a different relationship with their sister than we do. And so we were cued frequently by our other children about what Myra and Matt may or may not need or want, either in general or from us specifically. But there were a few times that I was aware of language choices and things to say and not say, not particular to the situation, but for example, if I said to Myra, if I didn't see her for a day for one reason or another, and I appeared at the house the next day and I said, oh, sweetie, I miss you. That didn't work. I wasn't entitled to miss her because she was going to be available. That wasn't okay. I couldn't miss her. So I learned that, and I just didn't say that anymore. She also taught me that it wasn't okay for me to use a pet name that I have for her, which refers to her being my firstborn baby girl, because Javi is her firstborn baby girl. And so if I slipped and used that endearing term, hackles went up. So I learned by the give and the take to be sensitive to the most accidental errors, you know. Obviously, we're all good listeners and we're all good observers and we're all ultra sensitive because we've had to grow to be that way. But there are just accidental things, you know, that come up, and those become your cues. So,
yeah, that just made me think about, you know, something that we talk a lot about with Javi is how the gift that she gave us to be observant and to notice little things and to slow down time. And often, usually we're talking about that in the sense of noticing how the light is reflecting on the tree, or that a flower is particularly purple, or, you know, whatever it is, the natural beauty around us. But when Mom was just talking, you know, we also became a lot more perceptive and a lot more intentional in understanding where someone else was emotionally and what their capacity was or is. We're still doing it, of course. And, you know, and filtering our language to make sure that we weren't unintentionally saying something that was triggering. And another example is, you know, things like saying, how are you, when you're trying to be supportive isn't helpful. And an easy fix that Myra and Matt taught us is, how are you right now in this moment? Where's your head? Or, you know, not this broad general, oh, how are you, you know, but rather right now, like, what do you need and how are you feeling in this moment? And so I think in the same way that we became more observant and perceptive and intentional and slowed things down in every other part of our life, it also allowed us to be really cued into how Myra and Matt, but then also the other people in our posse, as Charlie and Blyth referred to it.
Thank you, Leah. Dani, I saw you nodding. Are you?
I think something, I think both Sandi and Leah mentioned it, the idea of becoming so much more perceptive, because so often, I know for me at least, I could, before any of this happened, I couldn't walk into a room, look at my sister and know how she was feeling at any given time. And over the course of everything, of doctor's appointments, hospital trips, just the day-to-day of what our life became, there would be days when I would walk in and I would be like, okay, Lindsay's at her, you know, getting to the point of being overwhelmed. And so how can I take some of the burden? And it's not always possible, because the majority of the burden is just an emotional burden, and there's no words I can say that is going to make it better. There's nothing I can physically do that's going to make it better, but I can do what I can to lessen it in any way, whether that was, you know, why don't you go take a nap and I will sit with Quinlan and make sure everything's okay. Or if I'm being honest, I am not the type of person who will like cook or clean. It's just not my skill set. But, you know, I will fold laundry. I will whatever, just these little things. It doesn't always have to be these big monumental things that will make difference. Sometimes it is just as much as sitting next to someone on the couch and just letting them feel that you are sitting there with them. And yes, my grief and my feelings were never to the extent of what my sister's was, and I never tried to say that they were, but just sitting in grief with her, sitting in the silence beside her, and just letting her know she's not alone, because so often that feeling of being alone and being just, you're living something that's not right and not fair. So it's so easy to feel like you're the only one. So just literally just sitting next to her, I felt like was sometimes just the best thing that I could do in that moment for her.
Mm-hmm. I love that, Dani. The running joke in my family is that one of the greatest ways that that my sister-in-law showed up is that she cleaned my refrigerator. It's like, I just obsess about it all the time. Like it was hugely helpful. She just cleaned out my refrigerator. It had so much food in it, and who was paying attention to the refrigerator? Nobody. So I never stopped talking about it. Courageous Parents Network has resources for extended family members, videos that feature the voices of Dani, and also Leah and her brother and Leah's husband and sister-in-law talking about being extended family. And we have Robin in conversation with Carla. So we have a lot of videos, and Melissa and Sarah. And we are always eager to grow that. So we invite grandparents who want to talk with us, or aunts and uncles, to be in touch. But the guide we have, so I mean that very seriously, if you want to be in touch with us about talking about contributing, we would welcome that. The guide that we have has some juicy advice that we collected advice from parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, and put it together in a guide. And some of the questions, some of the salient points that came up, I'm not sure, Jennifer, that you need to, do you want to show it, or I can just read it here?
Okay.
I mean, maybe actually for visual learners, it would be helpful if you just brought that up. So some of these we've already touched upon, such as roles and healthy boundaries, and taking the cues from the parents. And we're going to talk in a moment about the grief piece, which is just a huge thing. I'm curious, I personally would love to hear you guys talk about how you tended to your own emotions and your own needs as you were supporting your sister or daughter, because this is happening to you too. I will actually just go first and say that I remember my mother, who did a beautiful job of being very present for me, at one point told me that I asked her how she was doing, and she told me she was looking for a therapist. And that was about all I could handle of thinking about her own grief. I was glad to know she was looking for someone, but I didn't really want to know much more than that. So that's that's an example of how that went in my family. Anyway, how did you tend to your own emotions, Robin?
Well, I can tell you that I started keeping a journal the first day. I knew that I would write a book. I would prolong Talia's life. I would catch every detail I could, and I like to, by managing words, I can manage my emotions. So I mentioned that because I might never find a publisher but I certainly have a manuscript I'm willing to share with anyone who wants to read it. I'll send the PDF to to anyone, and it's thorough, right through to my eulogy.
I've read it. You've shared it with me, and I agree that it would be very helpful to anyone who's curious. I absolutely concur.
And I'm trying to share it medically with there are people who teach grief management. There are people who teach genetics, and this is a genetic story. And so I'm looking to make it useful to educate anyone.
Mm-hmm. Michael, Sandi, how did you tend to what was happening?
I kept busy. I just kept moving, one foot in front of the other all the time. I just found things to do. Myra, maybe differently from any other scenario that people have experienced who are either participating in this evening or that you've worked with, Blyth. Myra was pregnant as Javi was dying. Myra had become pregnant prior to Javi's diagnosis. And we were helping Myra say goodbye to Javi while we were preparing her to welcome her second daughter. And so after the second daughter was born, one of the ways that all of us both helped Myra and ourselves was to help care for the newborn so that she got everything she needed, and that Myra and Matt would give her everything they were capable of giving that she needed, as well as ample time for them to continue being with Javi. So a lot of our grief was, the energy was expended on helping in so many different ways and keeping busy, and certainly the birth of Kaya was one of the primary ways.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very helpful.
Michael's a runner. He ran a lot.
Yeah. Honestly, I used running and as my therapy in part, and I did that too because it's a shared experience that our daughter Myra and I have, and so that kept me connected to Myra. It was also my way of, it's when I have my conversations with Javi. We have great conversations all the time. So that's in part how I try to handle it. Also, honestly, just cried a lot. I didn't handle my emotions, and I still don't, and I still cry every day. Sometimes I couldn't keep that if I was in physical proximity. I couldn't hide that, and sometimes I knew that was maybe not helpful, but I couldn't help it. But usually on my own, it comes out every single day. At some point, things are triggers. So it's an ongoing struggle, and it's also a gift and a reminder too, which is wonderful. So I guess my emotions are heightened as what Leah said before, and what one of the themes is, we learn so much, from our granddaughter and this experience, and she has heightened all of our emotions, and that's a gift.
Mm-hmm. Leah, how did you take what was happening and find ways to process it? And that's still happening. I'm aware of.
Yeah, it's certainly still happening. I've said before that in conversations with you, I think that, you know, Myra and Matt have done and are going to continue to do for their whole life, you know, such an impressive and beautiful job understanding their grief and understanding how they're processing Javi's life and death. And they have been really generous in sharing about their conversations with their therapists and everything that they read. And so I honestly feel like I've learned so much from them. And it is hard to be in the support role. You know, we lived with Javi and with Kaya, and I know that she is not my daughter, and that my grief is different than Myra's unique grief of losing her daughter. And so sometimes it feels hard to like allow myself to recognize that I'm also really grieving Javi and grieving for Myra, who is grieving her daughter, and that's a lot. And, you know, again, something that Javi was always showing us is how important being patient is, and and she's so graceful. And so I feel like through Javi too, I learned that it is so important to be patient and graceful with myself and allow myself, you know, to not be okay all the time and to take space. And I think I'm in a unique position because all my siblings moved here and we lived together. And so there are people who are in my exact position who I can talk to. And so I think making sure to take space and talk with them, and making sure not to put that on Myra and Matt, and still having an outlet of somebody who understands. I feel really lucky that I'm able to do that, and that my parents were here, and that, you know, we have a wonderful relationship and can talk about that. So I feel lucky in that way that there are people who understand that are not Myra and Matt. And that said, also, I think it was okay sometimes, and is okay sometimes, for me to grieve with Myra. You know, she's my big sister, and she has said to me often that she wants to be able to continue being my big sister, and that she doesn't want to feel like I'm hiding my feelings from her. And of course, that comes with an asterisk, that she says that when she's in an okay state of mind, when she has the capacity to say that. And there are other times when that's not the case. And so it's kind of, you know, a day-to-day understanding where my outlets can be. Yeah.
So beautifully said, Leah. I remember just something that it's coming up here, and you say that, is that I have a clear memory of being with my family and Charlie's family after our daughter's diagnosis, and the family had come in to surround us. And I remember thinking, I'm going to trust that they're taking care of each other because I can't take care of them. So I'm just going to hope that my siblings are taking care of my parents, and my parents are taking care of my siblings, and Charlie's parents are taking care of his siblings. And I'm just going to hope that that's going on, because, but I've never debriefed, so I don't know. Dani, how about you?
I don't know if I did the greatest job of handling my emotions, especially while Quinlan was still alive. I think I was very much, I wanted to turn off my own feelings so that I could focus on my sister, of course, and really be the one, whether it was in a doctor's appointment or whatever the case may be. I was always the one, let me make sure I'm absorbing all the information. I was constantly taking notes. I was doing all that I could in that moment to be the one thinking, so that my sister and her husband could just focus on feeling. And so then it would just get to the point where I've now shut off my own feelings for such a long time that they were going to explode. And so there would be weekends or just a night or what have you that I would go and stay either with a friend or at my mom's house or whatever, and just remove myself from the situation, just so that, one, I could figure out how I'm feeling, because so often it was just you're going, and there's not always the time to sit back and think about what's happening. You're just doing what needs to be done. So I would have to physically separate myself to think about it, and also just to make sure I am the little sister, and I am the bratty little sister a lot of the time. And so I didn't ever want it to be like I was exploding to my sister, who always would have been the outlet that I would be going to, and now I can't. So, you know, sometimes I needed to step away. I will say one other thing that I did during Quinlan's life, I documented everything. Like Robin was saying, she was constantly writing. I have literally thousands of pictures on my phone of everything, from like the good, happy moments to the terrible ones that we don't want to remember. But I made sure I was documenting everything, because things were moving so fast that it felt like it was my only way of being able to have any sort of, not control, because it wasn't, but any way of just making myself stay present, and also making sure that we have this record of everything. Almost every day there are pictures, videos of everything, because it felt like in that moment it was the only way I could deal with it, basically.
When I could control nothing, I could control words.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Dani, I really appreciate how honest you just were. And I also want to say that I know that Leah also was very quick with the camera. Javi's, just like Quinlan, Javi has a very well documented life, beautifully documented life. I am looking at who's here with us, and I'm aware that we have several grandparent sets. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. However, I do know that some of you have been doing this for a while. You have, your grandchild is older now, and you are still the grandparent. And I'm not going to name you, but if you have any advice or reflection, not advice, but reflection that you want to contribute to this conversation, I invite you to do that now. You can put up your hand and I will call on you. And for the younger grandparents, or rather the grandparents who haven't been doing it for so long, or the aunts and uncles, please also, if there are things you've learned, I mean, just this is a forum to share what you've learned and to share what you've struggled with, and to ask advice of these guys. Oh, okay. Yes. Sue.
Hi, Blythe.
Hi.
Yes, our grandson Alden is 18 months, so we have been doing this for a while. And I think the most important thing that I've learned is to, as someone said earlier, is to take the parents' lead. I often have a lot of questions that I want to ask or things I want to do, but hold back because I found it most helpful to observe where they are, take their lead, and do things quietly and on the side to help. I love that it was pointed out that they need their space as the parents and as a family. And I think all moms want to help as much as they can. So it's good advice to know to just stand back and watch. And as far as personally dealing with grief or understanding, I've also followed their lead with books, wonderful websites, CPN, of course, being the primary one, and learning as much as I could on how to process it all and be there.
Mm-hmm. That's really beautiful, Sue. I saw you this summer in Falmouth, and
Yes, we did.
You're a very present grandmother.
Well, we both are.
Yes.
The whole family is. We're all very lucky. We're close enough geographically and very close. So it's good. It's very, very lucky.
Yeah. Pat, I see you there. You're muted. Will you? Yeah. Okay.
Am I on now?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I just wanted to share that we, unlike a lot of the other grandparents, are the grandparents of a almost 26-year-old grandson. So we've been living with this problem since he was 7 months old. And I think we too have followed the parents' focus and tried to help in any way we could possibly help. In the younger years, you know, we were able to take care of him and help in that way physically. Now it's impossible. So our focus really has shifted to the parents and following their lead, as that woman said, and trying to do whatever we can to support our daughter and son-in-law to the best of our ability, really.
Yeah.
And we still are very lucky in that we can enjoy our grandson. I mean, we feel blessed that he is still with us.
Yeah.
And healthy enough that he knows who we are and responds, and actually is quite a joy to be with. So we just help in any way we can. And as I say, we follow the parents' lead and just try our best.
Okay. Sally?
Hi, Pat.
Hi, Sally.
I wanted to say hi. We share this grandchild of 26 years, right? One thing that I find interesting is that when I'm not hearing is from people what their anger might be regarding the situation. I've been aware of that over the years and myself at times. And I know that John, my son, struggled with that. My role in that with him was listening. And that's about all I could do. John and Barb are in total control of what goes on. They are phenomenal parents, very involved. And I'm just so proud of them.
I can speak to anger because anger wells up in me every day. There was a misdiagnosis and there was a birth, and but my daughter said to me, basically, you know, anger isn't going to help her. Just let's get down, you know, get down in the weeds and let's do it. Anger is not going to get us anywhere. So she's nicer than I am.
Anger is real, and we can't throw it away.
It dissipates.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
absolutely. All the feelings are okay. All of them are okay. Michelle? Oh, you're muted, Michelle.
Did that work? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. It's hard not to just cry over every story and comment that I'm hearing. My grandson is the most disabled child person I've ever seen in my life, and he's 5 and he's terminally ill, and wasn't diagnosed until he was born. And I was there when he was born. He is my first grandchild, and I now have 4. And that grandchild, my daughter went on to have another toddler who is healthy, and she's pregnant. And hopefully everything goes okay with that delivery in January. But I was there when he was delivered, and he looked fine to me, but they picked up on it right away in measuring the circumference of his head, that something wasn't right.
I, Michelle, will just step up there as the parent. So my daughter was the innocent person who had a condition and a very short life. And what helped me was reframing it so that I recognized that she was living the life that was hers. Something didn't happen to her. This was her life. And my job was to keep her as comfortable as possible for as long as possible. And it wasn't to protect her from her disease, because that was her life. Like, she was born with this thing. She, upon conception, this was her destiny. I'm not a big fan of that word, but so I just started focusing on something else. And maybe, obviously, it sounds like you're doing so much to show up in all these different ways. And I hope that by focusing on the ways that you are showing up and keeping your grandson's siblings happy and his parents as stable as possible, you are part of giving him the best life he can have. Anybody else?
I just want to say, Blyth, that you shared that message with Myra and Matthew, and they experienced it and acted on it to the nth degree. Their goal was to keep Javi comfortable and also to share as many wonderful times and opportunities and travels and people and experiences with her as they possibly could. They wanted her to touch as much of the world as she could possibly touch. And so instead of focusing on the length of her days, they focused on the content of her days. And Michelle, whether Javi was aware or not of these places and things that she was doing, she was very aware of her parents' love and of people around her and of all the tactile experiences and of the feeling of being surrounded emotionally and physically and in other tangible ways. She was very tactile, and she responded to so much stimulation, so that we don't know what sense she made out of any of it, but Myra and Matthew made her life, and therefore their own during that time, as rich and full as they possibly could, and then collected all of those memories with endless videos and photographs, which any parent listening who hasn't already done that, the way you can fit in is to take pictures, take videos. The parents are probably writing, but they are probably not taking pictures. So everybody get out there and click those cameras. But Michelle, I don't know, I think Blyth's reframing really helped save our children. They looked to Blyth and Charlie as the promised land. You lived through it and you are still living it, because it never goes away, but it is part of your journey. And you are healthy and you are whole, and you have two beautiful other daughters. And that reframing, I just can't emphasize enough what it did for our family, for all of us. We all learned how to do that.
I think
yes. Sue,
I think one
Sue and Dave.
Yeah, Dave.
I just wanted to say this is my first involvement, I think, in one of these Zooms, and thank everybody for everything they've said, because it resonates with all of us, I think. And everything you've said and how hard it is on everyone. And we're lucky because Alden is still with us. But I also try hard to think of the positive things. I think for us, I know Alden has made us in this whole experience, not that anyone would want this, but I think for us, certainly it's made us better people. It's made us experience things we never wanted to do, but we had to do it, and we have to do, you know, and I think we've grown with that. And however hard it is, in some way we benefited. And so I think I like to tell myself he's also been a gift to us. Yes. by, you know, as you say, you know, he's an innocent, you know, all our children were innocent people and never deserved this, but they've also been able to give us the gift of making us better people as a result of it. And I think the other thing, it's made in some ways the family, all of the family, and kept the family together in a way that we wouldn't have been, as, you know, we could have been drifting further apart. I mean, we're lucky to have a big family and a close family, but it strengthens the bond of the family and the siblings also. So although it's hard to do, every now and then we have to step back and realize the gift that this child and grandchild has brought to us.
Thank you, Dave, so much. I love hearing from the grandfathers. Sally?
Yes. While I acknowledged anger, John said to me, and this was several years ago now, their son, our grandson, is 26. He said, Mom, Jake has been a blessing to me. So he's come a long way. John is a great dad and loves Jake so much. And it shows. When I'm there, I see it. It takes time. We have to give ourselves time to grow with this. And we need to be patient with ourselves.
That's so wise, Sally. That's so wise. Yeah. Anybody else?
I also just wanted to acknowledge what you had said, Blyth, to Michelle about even though your grandson is still here, like, you know, the fear, and just acknowledging and appreciating, Michelle, the anticipatory grief that you're experiencing that Blyth was commenting on. And I don't have any words of wisdom about it other than to acknowledge and kind of, you know, be there for you, and have, this is a safe space where we are either have or are currently experiencing anticipatory grief, which isn't really something that I had understood before, and it's real and it's scary and it's all the things. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and that we all recognize that that's hard and scary.
Yeah. Thank you, Leah. And Michelle, if there are questions that you have, especially if you're worried about your grandson's end of life, which is something that we do not need to talk about right now, but there are people here, grandparents who've been there, aunts, parents, CPN, the whole package. We can support you and talk with you and answer questions that you have to the extent that may help take away some of the fear that you have. It can't take away the big problem, but we can answer some questions that you might have that could help. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us, okay?